You know, usually when you talk about scaling a construction business, there's this inherent expectation of like physical precision.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very tangible industry.
Right. You pour a foundation, you set up a laser level, and it shoots this perfect, undeniable line. The architectural blueprint shows you, literally to the millimeter, where the load-bearing wall needs to go.
Exactly. It's either plumb or it's not plumb.
Yeah.
Safe or unsafe. It operates entirely on objective reality.
But the moment you step off the job site and into the world of client communications, specifically the money conversation, that laser level just completely breaks down.
It really does. It shatters.
Yeah, we are suddenly navigating this financial landscape that is incredibly murky. So today, we're taking a deep dive into a stack of industry research, financial blueprints, and, market intelligence reports to tackle the construction industry's most dreaded topic: client budget expectations.
Which is such a massive pain point.
It's huge. Our mission here is to figure out why the money talk is so terrifying for contractors, and more importantly, how to systematically fix it so you can stop your profit from just evaporating.
It's a vital mission, really, because navigating client expectations around budget, well, that's where the hard science of building violently collides with the messy reality of human psychology.
That's a great way to put it.
And the financial fallout of getting this wrong is just severe.
Yeah, looking at the materials we've gathered, 30% of construction projects experience budget overruns that link directly back to unclear financial discussions at the very beginning.
30%. That's almost a third of all jobs.
Right, because contractors are afraid of having that firm money talk. They're watching like 10 to 15% of their potential profit just vanish into thin air before a single nail is even hammered.
Which is a staggering loss of capital for any scaling business. I mean, let alone an industry dealing with notoriously tight margins, fluctuating material costs, and, a really unpredictable labor market.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because avoiding the money talk out of a fear of losing the job is actually what's causing the business to leave massive amounts of money on the table.
It's totally counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah, contractors think they're saving the deal by softening the budget reality. They are actually sabotaging their own bottom line.
We really have to look at the underlying mechanics of why proactive financial conversations are so powerful. They aren't just this administrative hurdle to clear so you can start building.
Right.
They're a highly effective strategic tool. When you tackle the money conversation head on, you eliminate surprises, you set firm boundaries, and you ensure you actually get paid for the value you deliver.
Which changes the dynamic completely.
Fundamentally. It shifts how the client perceives you, from being a commodity laborer competing on price to being a respected professional consultant who manages risk.
That distinction changes everything about how you run the business. But, before you can even have a successful money conversation, you have to make absolutely sure you're talking to the correct client. Oh, 100%.
We're looking at a concept here called the pre-qualification filter. Think of it like soil testing before pouring a foundation.
That is a perfect framework for this.
I mean, if you don't test the soil and you just start pouring concrete into a swamp, the entire house is eventually going to sink, right?
Yeah, the structure just can't be supported.
Exactly. So bringing an unqualified prospect into your project pipeline without testing their budget, that's the operational equivalent of pouring concrete on a swamp.
Which is why a mandatory 15-minute discovery call is crucial. Its entire purpose is to be the bouncer at the club, testing the ground before you invest heavy resources into estimating.
Right. Estimating takes a ton of time.
It does. You have to clearly communicate your minimum project values right out of the gate. Like, if your operational overhead dictates that you cannot profitably take on a renovation under $50,000 or maybe a custom build under $250,000, you state that baseline immediately.
I can hear contractors wincing at that idea right now.
Oh, I know. It scares them. Like, if I get a warm lead on the phone and the very first thing I do is throw out a $250,000 minimum before I've even driven out to see the job site, aren't they just going to hang up? It feels incredibly aggressive.
Well, it only feels aggressive if you view it as an ultimatum. The psychology here is about positioning. You aren't demanding $250,000.
Right, you're not shaking them down.
Exactly. You are establishing the baseline for the caliber of work your firm provides. You're simply asking, does your vision for this project align with the financial realities of executing it at our quality standard?
Which is a very fair question to ask.
And the results of this approach speak for themselves. Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report reveals that contractors who use a structured pre-qualification process convert 30% more qualified leads.
Wait, 30% more?
Yep, converting 30% more is huge.
And logically, I mean, that makes sense. If you aren't burning 40 hours a week driving to sites and building complex estimates for jobs, you were never going to win.
Or worse, jobs you win but lose money on.
Oh, right, the nightmare scenario. Yeah, so you can redirect all that energy into the clients who actually fit your model.
Reclaiming your time is really the first major step in scaling. But it leads to the next hurdle. Even if a prospect clears that financial baseline and they have the budget, human nature dictates they still want the lowest possible price.
Always. So how do we pivot the prospect from asking how much to actually seeing the value of what we do?
You have to fundamentally transition the conversation away from cost-plus pricing and move toward value-based pricing.
Okay, before we talk about shifting to value-based, we should probably define what cost-plus actually means in this context, because it's so deeply ingrained in the industry.
Sure. So cost-plus is the traditional model where you calculate the raw cost of materials and labor, and then you just simply add a flat percentage fee on top, say 15 or 20% to serve as your profit.
Which, sounds perfectly fair on the surface.
It sounds fair,
Yeah.
but the structural flaw is that it drastically misaligns incentives.
Yeah.
Think about it. If your project management is incredibly efficient and your crew finishes the framing a week early, your labor costs go down.
Okay, yeah.
But in a cost-plus model, because your cost went down, your percentage-based profit payout also goes down.
Wow, okay.
You are literally financially penalized for being exceptionally good at your job.
It's a race to the bottom.
Exactly. Value-based pricing, on the other hand, is about charging for the outcome, the efficiency, and the certainty you provide.
But how do you practically illustrate that certainty to a client who's just, staring at a bottom line number on a page?
You quantify the alternative. You highlight how your specialized project management prevents the agonizing delays that plague the industry.
Right.
Like if you know your system prevents 1 to 2 months of schedule slip, you ask the client, what is 2 months of paying rent while your new home sits unfinished worth to you?
Or for a commercial client, what's 2 months of delayed grand opening revenue worth?
Exactly. You also quantify longevity, highlighting how superior craftsmanship might cost 10% more upfront, but it saves 5 to 10% in complex maintenance costs over the next decade.
So when you frame the conversation around preventing future financial pain, your price transforms from a simple cost into an investment in certainty.
An investment in certainty, yeah.
I really like that framing. So let's assume we've tested the soil, we've established our value, and the client is ready to move forward. Now we have to actually put the numbers on paper and present the bid.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Right. How does a contractor present a premium value-based price without causing massive sticker shock that blows the deal at the 1 yard line?
Through radical, uncompromising transparency. This is where detailed, itemized proposals become the strongest tool in your arsenal.
Itemization. Okay.
The industry tendency is to hide numbers in massive lump sums. Just a single line item that says kitchen remodel, $150,000, because contractors are terrified the client will nitpick individual materials.
Let's pause on that fear, because it is a very real one. If I give a client a line-by-line breakdown, aren't I just handing them a roadmap to start arguing?
It feels like it, I know.
Like, they're going to look at the line item for drywall and say, wait a minute, I was at the hardware store this weekend, and a sheet of drywall is $15. Why are you charging me 10 grand for drywall?
It's a super common reaction, but hiding the numbers actually breeds suspicion. If a client sees a black box of $150,000, their immediate psychological assumption is that they're being ripped off.
Yeah, human nature again.
By providing an itemized proposal, you're showing your work. When they ask about the $10,000 drywall, you don't get defensive. You use it as an educational moment.
So you walk them through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You explain that they aren't just buying the raw sheet of gypsum, they're buying the logistics of delivering it, the skilled labor to hang it flawlessly, the taping, the mudding, the sanding, and the insurance that covers the crew while they do it.
You are breaking down the invisible costs of construction.
More importantly, this level of detailed transparency is how you confidently justify your overhead and profit margins, which should be sitting clearly at 15 to 25%.
You don't try to bury it.
No, you do not hide your profit. You show it, and you explain that this margin is exactly what allows your firm to employ top-tier dedicated project managers, carry comprehensive liability insurance, and guarantee that your business will actually still be solvent in 5 years to honor their warranty.
Transparency equals trust. But here's where it gets really interesting. You can present the most beautiful, transparent, itemized proposal in the world. The client signs it, they are thrilled.
And then the build starts.
And then 3 weeks into the build, they change their mind. They want the imported Italian tile instead of the domestic ceramic. They decide they actually want to knock down a wall they previously said they wanted to keep.
Scope creep.
Scope creep is the silent killer of profit margins.
It absolutely destroys margins. And contractors often enable it because they're terrified that strictly enforcing change orders is going to ruin this friendly relationship they've built with the client.
Let's talk about the reality of being on site. The client walks in, they offer the crew coffee, and they say, hey, while you have the walls open, can we just move this outlet 3 feet to the left? It shouldn't be a big deal, right?
Classic.
The contractor wants to be the good guy. They want to provide excellent customer service, so they absorb the cost of the electrician's extra hour, they absorb the patching, and suddenly, after 10 of those little requests, the project is completely in the red.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
How do they say no without sounding like a jerk?
Well, you don't say no. You embrace the request, but you externalize the authority to your operational protocol.
Oh, that's clever.
You say, I would love to make that adjustment for you. However, our standard operating procedure requires that any deviation from the blueprint goes through a formal cost approval sheet first. We do this to make absolutely sure we are protecting your overall budget and not accidentally causing delays.
I see. You frame the protocol as a shield for their money rather than a hurdle you're putting up.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a prenuptial agreement.
Yes.
Nobody wants to sit down and talk about the legal terms of a potential breakup when everyone is happy and popping champagne at the start of a relationship. It feels like a total mood killer.
It really does.
But establishing those strict rules of engagement for scope adjustments, requiring written approval and secure payment before the new work begins, is what saves the relationship down the line.
It removes emotion and assumption from the equation.
Yeah.
When you have a signed prenup for change orders, there's no resentful argument at month 6 over a $5,000 invoice for Italian tile.
Because it was already agreed upon.
Exactly. And the financial impact of this discipline is undeniable. Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report actually demonstrates that robust change order management can reduce project cost overruns by up to 18%.
An 18% reduction in cost overruns dropping straight to the bottom line, just from having the discipline to pause the work and require a signature. That's massive.
It forces the client to pause and really consider the true cost of moving that outlet or upgrading that tile. It holds them accountable to the budget they agreed to.
But having a signed change order doesn't mean the cash is actually in your bank account.
True.
Agreeing on the price is only half the battle. How are contractors bridging the gap between an agreement on paper and, making payroll on Friday?
This brings us to securing the cash flow through rigid milestone payments. The golden rule of scaling a construction business is that you must never act as an unsecured bank for your client's project.
But if I'm a client and a contractor tells me they need 25% of a massive project budget before they've even broken ground, that feels incredibly risky.
Of course it does.
How does a contractor justify that structure without sounding like a scam artist planning to run away with the money?
You tie the milestones to tangible progress and significant out-of-pocket expenditure. A highly effective, standard structure is dividing the project into 25% intervals.
Okay, 4 chunks.
Right. You collect the initial 25% upfront, but you explain the mechanism behind it. You tell the client, this deposit officially secures your spot on our production schedule, and it allows us to immediately order long lead materials like custom windows or specialized steel before inflation hits, or supply chain delays jeopardize our timeline.
So you make the upfront payment a strategic advantage for the timeline. They're investing in speed. What happens after that?
The next 25% is due upon completion of the foundation, meaning you've completed the heavy earthwork and the concrete is poured.
Get it.
The third 25% is triggered at the rough-in stage, meaning all the framing, plumbing, and electrical systems are physically in the walls. And the final 25% is collected at substantial completion.
By doing it in those specific phases, the contractor is always slightly ahead, or at least breaking even on their cash outlay.
Exactly. It protects the firm's cash flow from drying up, which, by the way, remains the primary reason growing construction businesses collapse. Psychologically, it also ensures the client remains actively financially committed to the project every step of the way.
So what does this all mean for the day-to-day operations? I mean, managing 4 separate milestone payments, building highly detailed itemized proposals, tracking written change orders, and running a rigorous 15-minute qualification process across 10 different active jobs.
It's a lot.
That sounds like a full-time administrative nightmare. Throwing more administrative assistance at the problem just eats into the very profit margin we're trying to protect.
That is the exact friction point where scaling businesses either break through to the next level or completely break down. You cannot execute a highly sophisticated financial strategy using a spiral notebook and a spreadsheet.
You just can't.
You need operational force multipliers. This is where integrating specialized tech solutions and artificial intelligence becomes non-negotiable.
But how does AI actually solve the administrative bottleneck without just adding another, complicated software tool to learn?
It handles the heavy lifting of unstructured data management. Let's look at document intelligence. Modern AI doesn't just store files. It uses natural language processing to essentially read a 100-page, highly technical PDF spec book and cross-reference it with the architectural CAD drawings.
Okay, give me an example of how that works in practice.
Sure. So if the drawing says a rough window opening is 48 inches, but the written spec book on page 82 mandates a 52-inch specialty frame, the AI flags that discrepancy instantly.
Oh, wow. Catching that dimension anomaly before the materials are ordered and delivered to the site saves an incredible amount of money and time.
It prevents the mistake entirely. The technology also utilizes smart search across all your historical project data. If a structural issue arises on site, the AI can search past projects, find a similar load-bearing challenge you solved 2 years ago, and automatically draft a request for information, an RFI for the engineer, complete with all the technical context.
The RFI bottleneck is notorious for delaying projects by weeks. If the system drafts those technical queries based on past data, project managers are saving days of administrative work.
Days of work. And connecting this back to the money conversation, these AI systems provide incredibly sophisticated budget and variance insights. By tracking material costs, labor hours, and change orders in real time, the system updates the financial health of the project dynamically.
The impact of that is huge. You aren't surprising the client with a terrifying spreadsheet at the end of the month. They can see where their budget stands in real time.
Yes. And Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report indicates this level of automation reduces overall administrative time by 20%.
20%. That frees up so much bandwidth.
And it simultaneously improves financial forecasting accuracy by 25%. When your project managers aren't buried in paperwork, they have the bandwidth to handle more jobs simultaneously.
That makes perfect sense.
Furthermore, proactively sharing this real-time data with clients builds massive trust. It manages their expectations beautifully, resulting in a 90% client satisfaction rate, even when unforeseen costs inevitably arise during the build.
Because they saw it coming.
Exactly.
So let's fast forward. The project is finished, the final 25% milestone check is in the bank, and the client is thrilled. By the end of a long build, most contractors just want to pack up the trucks, sweep the site, and rush to the next job. Is looking backward really that important once the check is cleared?
This raises a critical question regarding the cost of willful ignorance.
Okay.
Emphatically, looking backward is vital. If you skip the post-project financial review, you are virtually guaranteeing that you will repeat your most expensive, invisible mistakes.
Doing a postmortem? I mean, who actually has time for that when the next job is already behind schedule?
You have to make the time, because skipping it leaves massive profit on the table. A rigorous postmortem requires sitting down and comparing your initial itemized estimate against your actual executed costs.
The dreaded actuals.
Yes. You have to ask the hard questions. Why did the framing labor take 40 hours longer than projected? Was it unpredictable weather, or was the initial estimate fundamentally flawed? Did we overorder lumber by 15%?
It's calibrating the estimating machine for the next run.
Precisely. The primary goal of a post-mortem review is to find the financial leaks, patch them systematically, and increase your net profit per project by 2 to 5% in the next quarter. If you do not measure and review the discrepancies, you cannot improve the margins.
Pulling back and looking at the big picture, consistently applying this entire blueprint, testing the soil with pre-qualifications, charging for value, transparent itemization, strict change order psychology, milestone cash flow, AI integration, and rigorous postmortems. You aren't just making a few extra bucks on one job, you are building an entirely different caliber of business.
You are building a reputation for uncompromising financial integrity.
Right. And in an industry where everyone has a horror story about a contractor who disappeared or doubled the budget halfway through construction, a reputation for financial transparency makes a firm a unicorn.
It really does.
It organically attracts higher value clients who are more than happy to pay a 25% overhead margin because they know exactly what certainty they're buying. Applying this strategy can effectively increase a contractor's average project value by 10% year over year. That is compounding growth simply from changing the mechanics of how you talk about money.
It fundamentally rewires the DNA of your operations. I want to leave everyone with a final thought to ponder.
Sure.
We have spent this deep dive exploring how radical financial transparency with your clients builds unparalleled trust, eliminates sticker shock, and prevents messy disputes. But imagine, for a moment, what applying that exact same level of financial transparency internally could achieve. Yes, if you shared these project budgets, the AI variance insights, and the postmortem reviews openly with your own project managers and field teams, imagine what that could do for their sense of ownership, their daily decision-making, and their overall execution on the job site. When the team knows the score, they play to win.
Treating the crew like true financial partners, not just manual labor, that is a massive paradigm shift. If you know a contractor who is dealing with scope creep and bleeding profit margins, send them this episode. It could completely save their bottom line. Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. And be sure to visit smartbusinessautomator.com to see how AI can help you scale without drowning in admin work.